Kaapo Kakko needs to be the Rangers' top-line right winger for the foreseeable future. We talk about that. We wonder if Igor Shesterkin is really back this time, and we discuss a whole lot more from the Rangers' 5-2 win over the Seattle Kraken.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 985 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's JASE medical.com. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers coming off their second straight win. They take down the Seattle Kraken 5-2. This is kind of a weird one because I felt like watching this game, it almost felt like the Rangers were 3 different teams with the 3 different periods that went by. You know, their performance was, I mean, overall, you have to take it, right? The Kraken were hot. They'd had that streak of 13 straight games without a regulation loss. They had won 9 in a row before they lost to Pittsburgh just the day before this game against the Rangers. But again, I thought the Rangers were really up and down. You overall have to take the performance. You have to take the result, a 5-2 win against a team that was on fire. The Rangers were kind of all over the place in this game, and we're going to break down what I mean by that a little bit later. But I want to start today's episode by talking specifically about Kaapo Kakko and his performance. Obviously, he had the goal there that boosted the Rangers lead up to 4-1, and we'll break that down in a little bit as well. But my biggest takeaway from this game is that, yes, Kaapo Kakko, he's just been back for 2 games, and, he's still getting going again. But what I've seen so far, he looks good, and I do think that he needs to be the Rangers' top-line right winger. We've talked about how, not just this season, but also seasons past, there's really been a revolving door there as far as the top-line right wing spot is concerned. A lot of players have come and gone over that time, and actually, one of those players is Blake Wheeler. We got to give some props to him for how he played in this game. He ends up with 2 goals, and hopefully, he gets it going a little bit and, transitions well back down to the bottom 6. But to me, yeah, it's still got to be Kaapo Kakko going forward. Looked very, very good through these first 2 games back. I think he's skating very well. He's shooting well. He's had a couple of really good chances to score. It was nice to see him break through here in this game. He's been going to work on the forecheck. He's a good defensive forward as well. We know that. And yeah, a minute ago, I just mentioned how obviously he's been close to scoring a couple of different times. You go back to the game before this, his first game back, there was one off of a feed from Alexis Lafreniere. This is near the end of a Ranger power play. Lafreniere was behind the net, pass in front to Kakko. Kakko put it just wide. That same game, there was also a scramble in the crease. I believe that was also at the very tail end of a Ranger power play, or maybe just after it expired. But he had a good chance to put one there and get a dirty goal to Kakko. And then in this game, excellent chance to score in the first period. So basically, you've got Ryan Lindgren, of all people. He's kind of leading the rush into the attacking zone there, and he's going in up the left side and looking to pass, looking to shoot, and then he sees Kakko kind of trailing the play at the center of the ice. He gets it to Kakko. Kakko receives the pass in stride, shoots it just wide of the near post. It would be the near post for Kakko, and just missed. And he was kind of shaking his head on the bench apparently, but at this point, you're kind of wondering, as a Ranger fan who has seen Kakko at times be a little bit snake bitten, you're kind of wondering, like, oh man, is this already happening? Like, he's been back for a game and a half at this point. Is he already snake bitten? Like, he's going to have all these good scoring chances, but just not score on any of them. And eventually, of course, he did score in this game. I also want to give him a shout out for, a small play that he made on the goal by Erik Gustafsson. This made the score 2-1 in favor of the Rangers and put them on top for the rest of the game. Erik Gustafsson really needed that, by the way. But basically what happens on this play, Braden Schneider started the whole play. He's got the puck in the Ranger zone, passes into the neutral zone, and Kakko, didn't have the puck for long. He had it for, a fraction of a second here. But what he did, he got the puck around the red line right in the the center of the rink, but, near the boards. And he redirects the puck forward. And that obviously, kind of kept the play moving there. And then you got Mika Zibanejad. He picks it up, moves over the blue line. Mika then leaves the puck for Kreider, who's moving up the right side, and Kreider tried to pass back to Mika. Mika had moved to the center of the ice at that time. Good play by the Seattle defender to poke it away, but it goes right to Erik Gustafsson. Gustafsson shoots and scores, and as I mentioned, Gustafsson really needed that. He's one of those guys that he got off to a fantastic start this season, but recently, I don't think he's really been playing bad hockey, but it feels like he's one of those guys that's just kind of there. So it's nice to see him get involved here. He had that turnover in the game before this that led to a goal against for the Rangers. So nice to see him get a goal here and break through after, again, 31 games without scoring a goal. But Kakko had a little bit of a hand in that goal. And then, of course, the one that he scored came later in the game on the rush, receiving a feed from Mika Zibanejad on that play. And we'll break that one down a little bit later when we discuss the entire second period. Because as I mentioned at the intro of this show, this second period, the whole game was a little bit weird with the Rangers just kind of being up and down. Good hockey, not so good hockey, not back and forth the entire game. Just kind of an uneven performance. It still resulted, like I said, in a 3-goal win. But again, they were just really up and down in this game, and never was that more on display, I think, than in the second period of this game. Rangers were kind of all over the place in that period, and Kakko did score there. And we'll talk about that goal in greater detail when we talk about the second period. But as for Kakko himself, he seems to be feeling pretty good right now. He's done better than I think a lot of people probably would have expected, considering that he had kind of an underwhelming start to the season, just the 3 points in the 20 games. And of course, he gets hurt and, he gets back. But, as I mentioned not too long ago, because we were talking, in the last handful of episodes before Kakko's return about just that, the idea of Kakko getting back into this lineup and how's he going to do and where's he going to play and what kind of ice time and who are going to be his line mates, all that stuff. But one of the things that I mentioned, and I'll mention it again here, is that maybe the injury to Kakko, if you want to be completely glass half full, maybe it could be a blessing in disguise because nobody wants to get hurt. We know that. It's got to be tough. I mean, the injury itself, I'm sure, didn't feel very good to Kakko. He hit the boards very awkwardly and his leg bent back and just did not look like a very fun experience for Kaapo Kakko there. But as I mentioned in a recent episode, the reason I see it as maybe a blessing in disguise is because he was off to a very underwhelming start to the season, at least from an offensive perspective. And yeah, I'm sure for Kakko, it was rough. He wants to be out there, wants to help this team win some games. They were doing very well without Kakko. And then they had the 4-game losing streak and probably more than ever probably wants to get back out there and try to help his team win some games. But the reason I think, again, that it's a blessing in disguise is that he did have that rough start to the season, so it allows you to kind of regroup, reset, refocus, kind of draw a line in the sand and step back onto the ice once you're finally back from injury and just kind of say to yourself, okay, my season begins now. Because Kakko's offensive numbers due in part to his slow start and also due in part to, obviously, him missing, I believe the final total was 21 games. His offensive numbers are not going to be what we were hoping for, what I'm sure he was hoping for. So it kind of allows you, again, to just kind of let go of that and just say, okay, season starts now. I'm on a great team here, a first-place team. I can help us, achieve the ultimate goal, which is, of course, winning the Stanley Cup. And that's a long way in the distance. But the bottom line, this team was struggling, going through some adversity for the first time all season. They'd lost 4 in a row before Kakko got back. And now he's back in the lineup, and they've won 2 in a row. Now, that's not all because of Kaapo Kakko, but he does help this team. Something that I mentioned again while we were kind of anticipating his return was that he just simply lengthens the lineup. It just makes it a deeper team. Kakko being on the top line, I do think that's their best option for the top line, by the way. You go Kreider, Mika, Kakko, but that also moves Blake Wheeler down to the bottom 6. I know Blake Wheeler has some doubters, has some people that didn't really like the pickup when it happened, and maybe they're still not feeling it right now. But a stat I want to throw at you guys here for Blake Wheeler, he didn't have any points in his first 10 games, and I think that was largely due to obviously adjusting to, the whole new experience of being a New York Ranger and leaving the Winnipeg Jets behind. In the 33 games since then that Blake Wheeler has played, 7 goals and 10 assists, a total of 17 points. He's also an even plus minus in that time, and his shooting percentage is 16.3, which is very good. Okay, those are not fantastic, eye-popping, incredible numbers, but those are numbers you can live with from a third-line type player. And again, with Kaapo Kakko being back, that puts Blake Wheeler down into the bottom 6, and it makes the bottom 6 at least a little bit better. On top of that, Kakko being back in the lineup, and no disrespect to any of the AHL guys that were called up and were in the lineup for, a game, 2 games, whatever it might have been, but Kakko being back in the lineup, that takes Bleed, Lecision, Nash, it takes guys like that out of the equation. They did the best they could, but Kaapo Kakko, far better player than any of them. And also, Will Cooley, I want to mention him here too while we talk about lengthening the lineup. The Rangers were kind of toying with the idea, it seemed, of going with him on the top line with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. And hey, you know what? The season's only half over, just past the halfway point here. That's something we could see a little bit later in the season. You never know for sure. But obviously Cooley not being there means that he's now back to the bottom six. And all of a sudden, that bottom six isn't looking so bad. You've got Wheeler there, who's been scoring at a higher clip. You've got Cooley there, who, just does a really nice job, a really consistent player, especially for a young player every night. Hard-hitting player, but also giving you some offense. And Jimmy Vesey's there in the bottom six as well. He'll get you some goals every now and then. Jimmy Vesey could end up with the most goals of his career. He's at 8 right now. His previous career best is 17. Did that twice with the Rangers. But the bottom line, Kakko just lengthens the lineup, like I was saying. It just makes this a deeper team, a more complete team. And, again, unless there's any true Jake Lecision truthers out there, I think you'll agree that Kaapo Kakko is probably a better option than Jake Lecision. And you do hope that Kakko eventually really gets it rolling offensively and that line can really get it rolling. But for the time being, I'm just happy to see him back. If Filipino comes back, that's just icing on the cake. And this team's basically back to full strength and they'll be as deep as they were at the start of the regular season. Even with the full lineup, you can always use a little bit more depth. But I think Kaapo Kakko certainly alleviates some of those concerns as far as Ranger depth is concerned. We know that he helps defensively. And as far as him being with Mika and Kreider, again, I'm all for it going forward. That's the line that the Rangers were rolling with as their top line on opening night. And obviously, Kakko hasn't been around for a while. Nobody else has really taken the bull by the horns as far as that top line right wing spot is concerned. So might as well go ahead, throw Kakko back out there, go with the line combination that you were anticipating you would go with at the start of the regular season and just see what they can do. And so far, so good. I think that line's off to a good start. I also have to wonder too, Kakko being back in the lineup, maybe that frees up Kreider and Mika just a little bit because Kakko is such a good defensive forward. They know that he'll be defensively responsible. So maybe that has an impact on those guys going forward as well. We will see. But overall, great start for Kakko being back in the lineup. And I think that top line for the Rangers have been looking good as well. But obviously, we hope that they keep rolling with it and that, good results continue to come after the return of Kaapo Kakko. So we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second here. I want to shift our attention to what is a really weird second period. I didn't think the Rangers played well in the second period at all, but that didn't stop them from winning the period 2-0. We will talk about that in just a second here. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Jace Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we talk for just a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That is scary. The J's case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to anybody. Visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off of your order. Also, I want to let everybody know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, so let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. Definitely want to, continue to enjoy this win, but I do have to kind of call out the Rangers for what was something of a lackluster second period, although it just feels so weird saying that because they end up scoring 2 goals. This is one of the strangest periods I think that the Rangers have played the entire season. Again, I thought they were badly outplayed in the first few minutes of this period. The first 4 to 5 minutes were basically a disaster. They're giving up odd man rushes. You've got Igor Shesterkin. He's under fire. He's having to make ridiculous saves left and right. We're going to talk about some of Igor's greatest hits a little bit later in today's episode, but yeah, I don't know. The start of this period, I thought the first period was pretty good for the Rangers, but in the start of this period, just didn't really seem like they were ready to go. And the proof was in the pudding. You look at what the Rangers did in the second period compared to the first and third periods. So the Rangers got outshot in the second period 16-10. The rest of the game, the Kraken only had 15 total shots on goal in the first and third period combined. So the Kraken had more shots on goal in the second period than the other two periods put together. And again, the start of the period was really bad. The Kraken must have had like 10 shots on goal in the first 5 minutes. I don't even really think that's much of an exaggeration. Sam even said something like that because at the start of the third period for the Rangers went like 10 minutes in the third period while allowing only one shot on goal to the Kraken. Rangers were playing excellent defense at the start of that third period. And yeah, I mean, it felt like, the Kraken got about 10 shots in the first 5 minutes of the second period. So just a stark contrast from their start to the second period and their start to the third period. Rangers, again, I thought they were getting really outplayed in the second period, but they do end up getting goals at 12:32 and 17:01 by Blake Wheeler and Kaapo Kakko. The Wheeler goal, I guess it's really just a case of the Rangers basically weathering the storm, and specifically Igor Shesterkin weathering the storm because, again, it's been such an up and down season for Igor. I'm thinking maybe he's back. We will discuss that in greater detail shortly here, but I do want to break down a couple of these goals that the Rangers scored in the second period here because they kind of ran away with it despite being outplayed for the most part in the middle stanza here. But basically, you've got Brodzinski from the goal line. He passes back to Braden Schneider, and then Brodzinski kind of moves toward the blue line and receives the pass back from Schneider, takes the shot. Blake Wheeler's in front of the net. Cooley was there too, but Wheeler gets the redirection and he scores and makes it 3-1. Wheeler apparently was working on deflections in practice. They were talking about that on the broadcast, and I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of that if Blake Wheeler, because I think one of his weaknesses and one of the things that Ranger fans are kind of pointing to is that he's a little bit older now, and he's not quite the skater that he used to be, just not quite as mobile as he used to be. You don't really need a ton of mobility. I mean, I guess you need to maintain your balance and everything, but you don't really need a ton of quickness and speed and mobility to be a net front presence and an effective net front presence. And Blake Wheeler, that's something that he still might be able to do. So I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of this. I wouldn't mind seeing Blake Wheeler. Depends on the line that he's on. And he was out there on this night with, Brodzinski and Cooley. And I thought that line overall looked pretty good. But I wouldn't mind seeing Blake Wheeler. I mean, he's a good passer still, but I wouldn't mind seeing him line up in front of the net every so often and just try to create a screen, create havoc, and maybe do what he did here, redirect the puck into the net. So a nice redirection there by Blake Wheeler. And I got to also shout out Johnny Brodzinski while we're at it here, too, because he had a good shift the one before this. He made a really nice play on the back check. Kraken had a dangerous rush into the Ranger zone as they were doing basically this entire period. Brodzinski got back, broke up the play, and then also made a defensive play not too long after that as well. Didn't stand out quite as much as this one, but Brodzinski playing well, and he almost scored on a tip-in try off of a feed from Artemi Panarin. So Brodzinski with a solid couple of shifts in a row here, and obviously it leads to a primary assist on a goal by Blake Wheeler. That gave the Rangers a 3-1 lead, a much-needed goal because, again, the way this period started, it felt like it was almost a matter of time before the Kraken tied things up, but Igor Shesterkin had other ideas, and of course the Rangers, despite not playing great, at least being opportunistic here, taking advantage of a scoring opportunity when it presented itself. Speaking of mistakes in the second period, they, not too long after this, had a really bad line change. It was weird because I didn't see who it was, but it might have been, maybe it was Lindgren, I'm really not sure, but somebody on the Rangers jumped off the ice onto the bench right while the Kraken were basically exploding up the ice through the neutral zone. So I don't know why. I mean, maybe his guy had already jumped onto the ice and he was trying to get off so they didn't get the too many men penalty, but somebody basically left the ice and just took himself completely out of this play. So now Adam Fox is the only guy back. He's got to try to defend a 3-on-1 rush. We know he's good against the 2-on-1. He made a great play here, though, did not even allow a shot. Just, great instincts by Adam Fox. Nice play here. But then the Rangers add to their lead, against all odds, again, the way this period was going here. Kaapo Kakko breaks through with a goal. Again, he'd been close a couple of times in the previous game. He was close once earlier in this game. But in this case, you've got Mika up the center of the ice into the neutral zone. Or rather, it was Kreider. Kreider made a touch pass in the neutral zone to lead Mika Zibanejad up the left side. And then Mika passes to his right to Kaapo Kakko. Kakko doesn't hesitate. He shoots. He scores 4-1. They said that somebody hugged him on the bench. They said that it was Johnny Brodzinski on the broadcast. I thought maybe it was Goodrow. It was hard to see. But regardless, Kakko's back. He was really excited after the goal was scored. And you got to feel like that's probably a weight off his shoulders. I mean, he knows his season wasn't going the way that he wanted it to. But he's looked good these first couple of games back. And as I mentioned, it's got to be tough to get close to scoring and get close to scoring. But then to finally break through with one here, hopefully that's an example of, the dam bursting, so to speak, for Kaapo Kakko, and hopefully there's more of this to come. I do think, though, I know there's some people that really want Will Cooley on the top line. I've even seen some people suggest why not go with Cooley and Mika and Kakko and then drop Kreider down to the third line. I mean, that's an option as well, but I do think the best iteration, and it's a line that isn't exactly new. It's not exactly a fresh idea because we've seen these three together before, but I still think your best bet is Kreider, Mika, and Kakko. Obviously, that could always be subject to change, but for right now, for the foreseeable future, let's go with those three guys. Let's go with the three guys that, people were excited about this line coming into this season, and for good reason. I think a lot of people were ready to see all three members of the kid line get into the top six. That's how the Rangers started the season. So let's get back to that. Fresh start for Kakko, and hopefully these three can pull their weight and start doing some more damage 5v5. We'll see how it goes. But again, so far so good for that trio and Kaapo Kakko specifically. Again, it was just a really weird second period. You really don't know how to feel about it. I suppose it's a good thing that, first of all, Igor was great, and we're going to talk about him in just a second, but also a good thing that the Rangers somehow collectively weathered the storm here and then took advantage of their scoring opportunities when they presented themselves. So in just a second, going to keep everything rolling. Talk a little bit about Igor Shesterkin. I thought he was fantastic in this game. We're going to talk about if he's really back for real this time. And also going to talk about the Rangers just kind of having an up and down defensive performance in this game. There's times where they really locked it down. There were other times where it just didn't seem like they really were all that interested in playing defense. But it all worked out. But again, we're going to talk about all that stuff, including Igor Shesterkin, in just a second here. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by our good friends at Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find candidates very, very fast. We are driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employees agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join the 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Igor Shesterkin. Thought he was just awesome in this game. He ends up stopping 29 of 31 shots. And, there's times in the past where, and I'm not the only one, but there's times where I've gotten kind of annoyed with the Rangers. They play some lackadaisical defense, and they rely on now Igor Shesterkin and back in the day, Henrik Lundqvist to basically save their bacon and just carry them to a win. I wouldn't say the Rangers necessarily did that in this game, but there were plenty of times where Igor Shesterkin really needed to pick up the slack. And I don't think that that's really a bad thing for just one night. You want the Rangers to play better defense than they did at times in this game. But with that said, I think Igor needed a night like this where the Rangers had to kind of lean on him a little bit. He had to be the best player on the ice, which arguably he was. They gave the first start to Kaapo Kakko. I think that's also partly because he's back from the injury and obviously scored a goal in this game. Igor was the second star, but to me, Igor needed a game where he was going to be one of the biggest reasons why the Rangers came away from it with 2 points, and he did that. There were some really quality saves mixed in throughout the night, especially in the second period. A lot of really good glove saves that Igor Shesterkin made, a couple impressive pad saves where he's moving left to right, and quite a few of those saves in some big spots in this game, too. There were quite a few that happened when the Rangers were up 2-1. So obviously every save he makes then, it preserves the lead for the Rangers. And again, there were some really nice saves during that stretch there. And also something else that I thought made this impressive. It looked to me, I don't know, maybe you guys saw it differently. You guys can let me know. It looked to me like Igor was off to a little bit of a shaky start in this game. The Kraken's first goal, that was a high danger scoring opportunity. And, I'm not going to put that one on Igor because Vincent Trocheck made a mistake in the neutral zone while trying to kill time off of a penalty that the Rangers had taken. The Rangers were shorthanded at the time. Kraken got a rush, and they ended up scoring and converting on their scoring chance there. But, Igor gave up that goal. And even though that wasn't Igor's fault, it just didn't look like he was going to make the save. And again, early in the game, it just kind of felt like Igor was fighting himself a little bit. Every save was a little bit of an adventure for Igor Shesterkin. Just didn't look like himself, but he really settled in as this game got going. And again, made a lot of his clutch saves, his biggest saves when the Rangers were up 2-1. And obviously not playing their best early in the second period. And to kind of highlight what Igor did, specifically in the second period, you had the Kraken taking a shot from the blue line. Igor made the save, and there was a rebound, and Igor comes up with a point-blank save. Again, this is right at the start of the second period, first minute or two. This sequence that I just described literally repeated itself on the same shift about 15 or 20 seconds later. Again, kind of a long shot from the Kraken, save made, chance in deep for the Kraken on the rebound. Igor stops that one as well. And then he ends up making, to get a play stoppage, ends up making a glove save on a shot from the blue line. The Rangers needed that play stoppage because, again, they were under fire at the start of the second period and just not playing their best hockey. The shift after this, you get a 2-on-1 for the Kraken. Yamamoto ends up shooting. Igor turns that aside with a really nice blocker save there. Basically, Gustafsson had pinched on that play, and Schneider was the only guy back. So Schneider takes away the pass. Igor takes care of the rest. Nice blocker save to once again preserve the lead for the Rangers. And then kind of a weird one here. Igor had to make a save through some really heavy traffic, and the puck kind of bounces up into the air, lands in the crease. Nobody knew where it was for a second, and thankfully the Rangers found it first and were able to skate away from it. But again, the Kraken were basically just kind of pressuring Igor Shesterkin nonstop throughout this entire sequence in the second period here, and he stood tall, stood on his head, made some really nice saves, and once again preserved the lead for the Rangers. That's one thing I can always count on from Igor Shesterkin. It does feel, he'll have some clunkers like any goalie will. You play long enough, sooner or later you're just not going to have it on any given night. But it does feel like when the saves really need to be made, when it's crunch time and the game is about to swing in the other team's favor, that's when he'll come up with the big saves, and he was doing this here in the second period. And then the Rangers in the beginning of the third period, they really kind of picked things up defensively. You could see them kind of going with that 1-3-1 that they've had some success with, and Kraken were having trouble getting through the neutral zone. I mentioned earlier that in the first 10 minutes of the third period, the Kraken got a total of only one shot on goal. And it just felt like the Rangers did something that they've been doing mostly throughout the entire season. When the Rangers have a lead in the third period, say like 2 goals. I know this one was 3 goals, but say like 2 goals, it feels like they've found a way to strike this good balance between continuing to attack at times, but not doing so to their own detriment. Not having things where you're just trading odd man rushes up and down the ice with your opponent, whoever that may be on any given night. Because the Rangers here, I love their start to the third period. The first 10 minutes of the third period, I thought it was great. Rangers were still getting some scoring chances, but they were never getting caught out of position. There were always people in the neutral zone. They always had their defenseman back. There wasn't really anything close to an odd man rush or really even a rush of any kind for the Kraken for those first 10 minutes. The Kraken did eventually kind of pick up their game a little bit after that. They ended up scoring on the power play for the second time on the night, cut it down to 4-2. But the Rangers took care of everything else. And, obviously the Blake Wheeler empty netter, sealed the deal. But when it was 4-2 again, Igor making some nice saves. You had Larson taking a slap shot from the blue line. Igor made a nice right pad save there. And then also one of his best saves of the night. And again, this is in the kind of the last few minutes of the game. Rangers are up 4-2 at this point. Really strong glove save against Alexiak. Basically, the Rangers blocked the shot, but it kind of worked out in the Kraken's favor because it went right to Alexiak. So point blank, right on the doorstep, Igor Shesterkin, an outstanding glove save, full extension to his left to make that stop. One of his best saves of the night. And again, just a fantastic performance overall by Igor Shesterkin. The Rangers as a team defensively, very much up and down. Again, it goes back to what I was saying right at the start of today's episode, where there were times where they didn't even look like the same team. They looked like they were 3 different teams throughout the 3 different periods in this game. But again, it all worked out. They found a way to beat a team that's on fire and beat them by 3 goals. And I think you have to take that despite this not being a perfect performance by the Rangers. One other stat I want to throw at you guys. They mentioned it during the broadcast. The Rangers came into this game 16-0-1 when scoring 4 or more goals in a game. They are now 17-0-1. So obviously a nice stat there for the Rangers. And also just wanted to mention that Jacob Trouba became a dad. Big time congratulations to him. We mentioned that in our last episode, the crossover with Erica Ayala from Locked On Kraken. A lot of fun recording that episode, but wasn't sure that Trouba was going to be playing in this game, but he was back out there. And again, him and his wife Kelly, congratulations to them. They welcome a baby boy Axel, and it seems like the entire family is doing great. So that's awesome to hear. Congrats to Jacob Trouba on becoming a dad. Very cool stuff. So yep, I figured we pretty much call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is at LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.